One-foot-flipper.
Hi, Paige here, the 1-foot-flipper. How have you been? Doing pretty good. I had a great day of sales and sourcing yesterday. Probably not going to get anything new now for quite a while. My basement is stuffed. My main room here is stuffed. My van is stuffed to the gills. And I've still got to buy another van because my plates are still expired. Finally, something yesterday popped up that I really wanted to buy on Facebook Marketplace. I messaged the seller right after they posted it, about 10 minutes after they posted it, and still have yet to hear back from them. I guess it's one of those reasons why I say selling on Facebook Marketplace is terrible, because people are used to the sellers and buyers both being awful. I mean, if you're going to sell a car, what do? You post it on Facebook and then immediately don't check Facebook for at least a day? Good strategy. So today we're going to talk about 8 reasons why video games are a terrible category to sell in on eBay. Now, before you go jumping at me, there are plenty of reasons why video games are a great category to sell on eBay, but we're not talking about that. We're going to talk about the reasons why it's a terrible category, because it's both. And I'm sure there are plenty of you out there who specialize in video games and you're killing it. That's great. Keep on keeping on. I'm glad you're successful at it, but we're going to talk about why it's terrible. And the first reason is that the competition is insane, both for the sourcing and for the selling. You see people in their videos asking people for video games, and how sometimes that leads to very awkward situations, or the people go through, what you don't see is when the people go through a whole bunch of trouble to then pull out absolute garbage games out of their basement, and then the seller, the buyer, are you buying that? Did you inconvenience those people to pull out those worthless Madden games? What are you going to do in that situation? I don't know. That's why I don't ask for video games. But you also got any sale that advertises they have video games, there's going to be 6 dudes waiting in cars for that sale to start. At least around where I live, they're going to be waiting for that garage door to open, waiting for the people to come and put the games outside, knocking people over to get there first once the door is open. But most of the time, there won't even be anything there, because they'll have already sold the games 2 days earlier or the night before to the people who messaged them before the sale even happened. And that's the same way anywhere where there's video games. There's just so many people who love video games and they want to specialize in them. They want to specialize in them so much, even if it's not all that profitable for them. They will go to just great lengths to sell video games instead of things that make more money. I used to do the same thing with trading cards, and I know plenty of other people who are still doing the same thing with trading cards. They love them so much that they're ignoring higher profit areas to concentrate on those things. Speaking of video games, I sold this Super Mario Brothers 5-screw for $9.99. Now, this type of video game I actually like. I like cartridges. Cartridges are okay. And I also sold, out of my bar filming background, which you haven't seen in a few days because it's piled with inventory again, this Zip the Monkey. He is in pretty poor condition, otherwise he'd be worth a lot more. I sent out a 10% offer and sold him at $40.49 to a very excited buyer. Apparently Zip's going to go on vacation with her to Florida, and we'll have a great new home. So now I need a new, different, cool vintage plush to hang out on my bar with Miss Piggy, the cookie jar, which, by the way, one of you should buy Miss Piggy. She's getting lonely. She keeps meeting new friends, and they just leave her immediately. Now, the next reason why video games are a terrible category on eBay is because they're like DVDs or books, in that most of them are essentially worthless. At least most disc-based games. If you just pull an average stack of disc-based games out of nowhere, you're going to find that you're going to have a whole bunch of games that are barely even worth the cost of shipping. Because disc-based systems are just, everything popular sold millions of copies, and they're still all out there. And unlike, your DVD, your other media sellers, and your book specialist, they're mostly going to pick and choose, but your game sellers are going to buy, for the most part, they're going to try to buy it all, even though most of it isn't any good in the first place. I sold Ray here for $3.59. Ray is one of the worst figures of this series, even worse than some of the supporting figures. The reason that Ray here is bad has to do with the distribution in the cartons of these action figures. Now, I haven't worked in retail in a long time, but I bet it's still very similar. The carton of these action figures are going to be heavily seeded with Rays because she's the hero of the movie. They're going to have a ton of Rays. Then it's going to go down from there in the importance of the characters, and the supporting characters will often be extremely rare, especially supporting bad guy characters, minor bad guys. Those will often be the rarest ones. So you've got the case where Ray was produced the most, but unfortunately, these figures are mostly going to be bought for little boys, and little boys aren't going to want Ray as much as they're going to want Finn or Darth Vader or one of the male characters. Little boys just don't tend to like the female characters as much. The grown-up collectors love them. I love them, but as a little boy, if I'd have been a little boy when these movies were coming out, I would have wanted Finn. I wouldn't have wanted Ray. So that's why Ray is the least valuable one. Now, the next reason why video games are a terrible category on eBay is that the category is just in a long-term decline, and it's never going to turn around, ever. The industry is moving to downloads. PCs moved to downloads 15 years ago. I don't know anybody buying physical copies of PC games anymore. Most of them aren't even available in physical copies at all. And meanwhile, these 21st century consoles, they're dying left and right because they're complicated. They're basically modern PCs on the inside, full of parts that the average, the average guy cannot repair. Oh, they figure out how to repair the basic defective things that happen early on in the system's life. That stuff gets figured out, but if a RAM chip gets a bad bit in it, or you get a bad resistor underneath a chip someplace, all of which is microscopic in size, and that's the sort of stuff that happens from age, that motherboard's essentially going to be unrepairable. And these things just die left and right the older they get. And every time one of those consoles dies, guess what? You've lost another casual possible purchaser of those games, and that person's game collection hits the market, where it stays forever. And in addition to that, you also anything popular is probably going to have an HD remake or direct download either on PCs or newer systems, and those, especially the direct downloads, will often be cheaper than buying the original physical game. Sometimes much cheaper. Let's see, what else do I got here? I sold this Curtis Mayfield album, Back to the World, $14.99. Gatefold here, nice little profit. All my records are in the profit right now, so it's all good money from here on out. Next reason why video games are a terrible category to sell on eBay is that the good stuff is getting pretty thin on the ground out there. What I like is the cartridge-based systems, just because they are long-lived and there's reproduction consoles available for the cartridge-based systems. Even if your Nintendo dies, if it does die, it's probably easily repairable. And even if you can't repair it, you can buy one of many different clones or fakes. The thing is, there's not going to be any clones or fakes of the PlayStation 3 or the Xbox or the Xbox 360. The hardware is too complicated and too fast to put onto an FPGA chip or just to brute force emulate with a faster chip. It's not going to happen, probably not in my lifetime. If it does happen, it's going to be so far in the future that no one's going to care anymore. No one's going to care about emulating the PS3 version of Half-Life 2 when Valve will probably still be updating the current PC version anyway, because they've been updating that for about 20 years now. All right, what else did I sell here? Sold this Boston CD for $18.99, Boston Corporate America. Most CDs aren't worth your time. I only get CDs basically if they just get tossed in with stuff, because Much like the video games, most of them aren't worth the cost of shipping, but this one is, because this one, they both came out pretty much after Boston was a thing and after CDs were a thing. This is a 2002 date on it. That's why it's actually valuable. And I also sold this tub of American plastic bricks for $12.14. I believe I paid about $3 for that. It would have been worth more, but it just is in such poor condition. Now, the next reason why video games are a terrible category to sell on eBay is there's high amounts of labor involved for very low profits. Often I'll see my other YouTube friends, they'll do something like, they'll put together a Wii bundle and sell it for $53. And to do that, they piece together a system and tested everything and bundled 10 games with it and put all that together, sent that out for probably what was a $15 profit. And they've probably got an hour or more into piecing that together, not even counting finding the stuff, just the testing and putting it together and the listing and the shipping. That's not a good return on your time at all. I'd rather buy a VCR for $2, not test it, sell it for $30, chuck it into a box, and hope that it works. You can test it too, but most of the time, I found most of the time they do work. I actually do test them, but either way, it's not a great bit of profit for your labor. I sold a piece of sheet music for $24.99. Now, since this sold on a Friday night, I went ahead and I messaged the customer. I said, hey, I'm already sending you a package, so if you want any other of my sheet music or records or whatever, if you want to buy those by tomorrow night, I'll refund the shipping on any more of them you buy, and I'll just ship them all together. They said, oh, thank you. And they went on and they purchased 3 more. Now, my descriptions on all that stuff already says that it's all automatically combined shipping, but buyers don't read. So messages like that can really increase your sales on those items. I only generally tend to send those messages on the weekends because I ship every day otherwise, but I do get some decent returns on those sometimes. This person scrapped up another $9 worth of lower value ones that would otherwise be hard to sell because of the shipping costs. So it was a win-win. The next reason why video games are a terrible category to sell on eBay is that the playfield isn't really even or fair. Because the first thing is you're competing against thousands of sellers who are cheating media mail. This is easy to see, both because you'll find things priced at a point they couldn't be sent by anything other than media mail. Sometimes you'll see things priced with shipping costs that are the direct media mail cost. And until about 6 months ago, eBay was defaulting to media mail and video games, even though it's not been legal to send them that way for 10 years. And these sellers are still doing that. They're just now printing their labels elsewhere. And some of those sellers are actually very big sellers, huge sellers, sellers who have media mail pre-sort. So they're getting even better rates on their cheating of the system. Instead of paying $365, they might be paying $277 or $259, depending on what pre-sort rate they have. And they're cheating the system in mass. And then you've got the other sellers who are selling loose discs with stamps. This is fine, except it will ruin your top-rated seller status. So you've got to have basically a whole separate account if you want to send loose discs with stamps. And expect a high rate of claims on those. I sold this Warhammer Tank sprue for $19.99, incomplete. This was something that I was gonna throw away. Good thing I didn't. All right, next reason. Oh, nope, one more. Sold this vintage pack of sanding discs for $5. I would never buy anything like this. It was in a box of stuff I bought, but it actually sold. Now, your next reason why video games are a terrible selling category on eBay is that returns are very high on the systems themselves. You think it worked fine at your house, but you only played it for 10 minutes, never really got the kind of full workout that the customer might give it in the very first day. Maybe something jarred in shipping, and now that laser's not reading correctly anymore. And just in general, you're going to have a huge return rate on those systems. And that's going to eat into your profits. Sold this Kung Fu 1.5 screw for $4.99. The reason I'm mentioning the number of screws is a lot of the early Nintendo games have variations as to whether they have 3 screws or 5, and the Gotta Catch 'em All collectors, they want one of each for their collection. My final reason as to why video games are just a terrible category on eBay is that there's a high percentage of problem customers in the video game categories in general. Unreasonable customers who are running scams, who are trying to steal your money or your products, customers who are going to take your working system and send you back the broken one, customers who are going to claim not to receive the item, particularly if you're sending those loose discs with stamps. I know in my early eBay days I specialized in 2 things, CDs and video games. And probably 80 to 90% of my problems were the video game customers. I really didn't hear anything from the CD customers unless I accidentally sold a scratched up CD and didn't notice it. That was about all the problems I'd ever have in that. Nobody was making fraudulent claims or anything like that. And let's end on a couple of sales here. Sold this Man of War rulebook, $40.49. This came out of the box set. The box set, I think, was only $40 when it was new, and this rulebook out of it alone sold for $40.49. And I lost that earlier. I spent an hour looking for that. Somehow, when I pulled all my orders today, I filed that back into the sheet music box after pulling the sheet music out. It's not where it came from, and I eventually, after backtracking everything, I did figure that out. So yes, I make mistakes too. And I sold this lot of Native American crafting puzzle pieces for $4.36. There were a bunch of these. I made multiple lots of them that I got in a box of something or other. All right, I think that's about all I got for today. Now, I know you're going to have some things to complain about in the comments, but before you do, hit the like or the dislike. You're definitely going to want to subscribe because I'm going to say more things in the future that you might disagree with, and I know you want to tell me about it. Until then, see you again soon.